The wind on the bridge carried the scent of rain and regret. Sarah Mitchell stood at the edge, her fingers wrapped around the cold metal railing. Below, the river moved like liquid darkness, indifferent and eternal. She had driven here without thinking, her body operating on autopilot, while her mind replayed the same loop it had been stuck in for 2 years, the screech of tires, the crumpling metal, the silence that followed. Lily's silence. Her daughter would have been 10 now, would have started 5th grade, would have argued about bedtime and asked impossible questions about the universe. Instead, there was only the hollow space where a child's laughter used to live. Sarah lifted one foot, testing the boundary between earth and air. "You don't want to do that." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Sarah spun around, nearly losing her balance. The bridge was empty. Street lamps cast pools of orange light on wet asphalt, but there was no one. Then she saw it. Him. Them. The figure stood in the space between 2 lights, tall enough that Sarah's mind struggled to process the proportions, human-shaped but elongated, as if someone had taken a person and stretched them toward the sky. The being wore something that resembled clothing, but seemed to shift and breathe with its own life. But it was the eyes that made Sarah forget about the river below. They were silver, luminous, and unbearably kind. "I'm sorry," the being said, moving forward with a grace that suggested bones might be optional. "My species doesn't always understand your protocols." The voice was neither male nor female, but carried harmonics that made Sarah think of wind chimes and distant music. "You may call me the gardener." Sarah's hand went to her phone, but she couldn't remember why. To call who? The police? A psychiatrist? Herself, to confirm she hadn't already jumped. "What are you?" she whispered. "A collector," the gardener replied, stopping a respectful distance away. "I travel between worlds, seeking those who have been broken beyond their capacity to mend. I offer them sanctuary." "I don't understand." The gardener tilted its head, and Sarah noticed delicate patterns moving beneath its skin like bioluminescent veins. "You were going to step off this bridge. You were going to end your pain by ending yourself. I'm offering you another option." Sarah's throat tightened. What option? "Come with me to a place where grief cannot reach you, where memory becomes gentle instead of jagged, where your daughter waits in a form more beautiful than flesh." The gardener extended one long-fingered hand. "I maintain a garden on my world. In it, I cultivate souls too wounded to bloom in harsh reality. You would be safe there. You would be whole." For a moment, one terrible, tempting moment, Sarah almost reached out. Then her sister's face flashed through her mind. Rachel, who had sat with her through countless sleepless nights. Rachel, who refused to let her dissolve into grief completely. "I can't," Sarah said, stepping back from both the railing and the gardener. The being lowered its hand without disappointment. "The garden will remain. When you are ready, think of me, and I will come." Then, like mist disturbed by morning sun, the gardener faded into nothing. Sarah stood alone on the bridge, her heart hammering, wondering if exhaustion had finally broken her mind completely. She drove home and said nothing to anyone. 7 days later, the disappearances began. At first, the news reports were scattered, unconnected incidents across different cities. An accountant in Portland, a teacher in Miami, a retired soldier in Detroit. All of them gone without trace, leaving behind only handwritten notes with variations of the same message. The gardener called. "I'm going to the place where pain ends." By the end of the 2nd week, the count had reached 300. By the 3rd week, thousands. The world fractured into panic and speculation. Cults claimed the rapture had begun. Scientists proposed mass hallucination. Governments mobilized task forces that found nothing to investigate. There were no bodies, no evidence of foul play, no common thread except the notes and one other detail. Every person who vanished had been documented with severe depression, trauma, or suicidal ideation. Sarah watched the news with a crawling certainty in her stomach. She knew exactly where they had gone. The knock on her office door at the university came during her afternoon class break. She opened it to find a man in his early 40s, dark circles under his eyes that spoke of intimate familiarity with insomnia. "Professor Mitchell? I'm David. I'm a journalist, but I'm not here for a story." He glanced down the hallway nervously. "I'm here because 3 weeks ago, something impossible spoke to me on my apartment balcony, something that offered to take away the pain of losing my wife." Sarah's breath caught. "The gardener." David's eyes widened. "You've seen it too." They found a coffee shop where the noise of espresso machines and casual conversation could hide their impossible discussion. David had been investigating the disappearances, compiling data, searching for patterns. "It's not random," he said, spreading printed charts across the sticky table. "Every single person who vanished was at a breaking point. Some had attempted suicide before, others were days away from trying. It's like this thing has a radar for human suffering." "It said it was collecting us," Sarah said quietly, "taking us to a garden where we could be healed." "But healed how? That's what terrifies me." David pulled out another document. "I found something. 2 days ago in Denver, a woman named Patricia Reeves was found wandering near the same spot where her husband disappeared. She was incoherent, rambling. The hospital diagnosed her with a psychotic break. But I visited her." "What did she say?" David's hands trembled slightly as he pulled out a small recording device. "I need you to listen to this." He pressed play. The voice that emerged was thin and fractured. "They're not dead, but they're not alive. Not sleeping, not awake. I saw them, hundreds, thousands, floating in pods like flowers, so beautiful. But Marcus, his eyes were open but empty. I called his name and he didn't know me, didn't know himself. Just peace, endless peace. No thoughts, no memories, no Marcus." Static consumed the rest. "She went back. 3 days later, she walked into her backyard and vanished, left a note. I understand now. Peace is better than pain." Sarah felt ice spreading through her veins. It's not healing them, it's erasing them. Or saving them, depending on how you look at it. David met her eyes. "That's what makes this so horrifying. What if they're happy there? What if being erased is better than continuing to suffer?" Before Sarah could answer, her phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Where are you? Mom's asking for you. Please call." Sarah had been avoiding her mother. The woman's Alzheimer's had accelerated in recent months, and now most days she didn't remember Lily had died. Some days she didn't remember Lily had existed, and on those days, Sarah envied her. Was that what the gardener offered? Not death, but a kind of beautiful forgetting. We need to find out what's really happening in that garden before more people disappear. How? It's on another world. Maybe, but there might be a way to look without going. David pulled out a device that looked like a tablet modified with additional sensors. "I've been working with a physicist friend. If the gardener is using some kind of dimensional gateway, we might be able to scan it, see what's on the other side." That's insane. More insane than an alien collecting suicidal humans? Sarah couldn't argue with that. They began their hunt. Using David's data, they mapped the locations where disappearances occurred most frequently. The pattern was subtle but definite. Certain areas showed clusters, as if the gardener visited specific places repeatedly. One location appeared again and again, Riverside Park, near the old carousel. They set up their equipment at midnight, when the park was empty except for shadows and the distant sound of the river. David's scanner hummed softly, its screen painting the darkness with digital light. "If the gardener appears, don't accept anything it offers," David warned. "Don't touch it, don't agree to anything, don't—" "I know," Sarah interrupted. "But did she?" "Part of her, the part that still stood on that bridge every night in her dreams, wanted to hear the offer again. The gardener materialized without fanfare, simply present where it hadn't been a moment before. "Sarah," it said warmly, "and you've brought a friend. David, isn't it? I remember offering you sanctuary." "We want to see your garden," Sarah said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "Show us where you take people." The gardener's luminous eyes regarded them with something like amusement. "Very well. I have nothing to hide from those who ask with open hearts." It raised one hand, and the air before them rippled like disturbed water. Through the distortion, Sarah glimpsed something that stole her breath. A vast space that seemed to exist in twilight, neither day nor night, and within it, floating in translucent pods that resembled flowers more than technology, were people, hundreds upon hundreds of people, suspended in fluid that glowed with soft light. Their faces were peaceful, eyes closed, bodies relaxed. But it was what David's scanner was showing that made Sarah's blood run cold. The screen displayed biological readings, neural patterns, consciousness markers. Every single person in those pods showed the same reading: minimal cortical function, no memory formation, no higher cognitive processing. Their brains were alive but functionally empty, running on basic autonomic systems and nothing more. "They're vegetables," David whispered. "You've turned them into vegetables." "I freed them from the prison of suffering," the gardener corrected gently. "Their pain is gone, their trauma erased. They exist in perfect peace." "They don't exist at all," Sarah's voice cracked. "They're breathing corpses." "Are they? Their hearts beat, their cells regenerate, they feel contentment. Is that not existence?" The gardener's voice remained maddeningly calm. "You judge from your limited perspective. You assume consciousness requires complexity, that identity requires memory. But suffering also requires these things. I have removed the capacity for anguish." "By removing the capacity for everything," David said. The gardener turned its silver eyes to him. "Tell me, David, when your wife died, didn't you wish even once that you could simply stop thinking, stop remembering? Stop being the version of yourself that knew loss? I offer that mercy." David's jaw clenched, but he didn't answer. Sarah forced herself to look closer at the figures in the pods. So many faces, all relaxed in drugged serenity. And then she saw... No. One pod, smaller than the others. The girl inside couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Dark hair fanned in the glowing fluid. Features Sarah would recognize across any distance, any reality. "Lily," she breathed. "Your daughter has been with me since the accident. She was dying, frightened, in pain. I took her before the end. She has known nothing but peace for 2 years. Would you rather she had suffered, rather she had experienced those final moments of terror and agony?" Sarah's legs gave out. She fell to her knees on the damp grass, staring at her daughter's peaceful face through the dimensional window. "Let me see her, please." "Of course." The gardener gestured and the window widened, becoming a doorway. "Come and see what sanctuary truly means." David grabbed Sarah's arm. "Don't. Once you cross, you might not come back." But Sarah was already moving forward, drawn by a gravitational force stronger than reason. She stepped through the rippling barrier, and suddenly she was in the garden. The temperature was perfect, not hot, not cold, but exactly comfortable. The light was soft, easy on the eyes. The air smelled of things that didn't quite exist. Memories of flowers, whispers of rain, suggestions of home. And everywhere the pods bloomed like strange fruit, each containing a person who had chosen to forget they were a person. Sarah approached Lily's pod with trembling hands. Up close, she could see her daughter's chest rising and falling with mechanical regularity. Her face held an expression of utter tranquility. "She doesn't dream," the gardener said, appearing beside Sarah. Dreams require a self to experience them. She simply is. Pure existence without the burden of identity. "She's gone," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "You didn't save her. You erased her." "I saved her from a painful death, from the trauma of understanding her life was ending, from the fear that gripped her in those final seconds. Here, she has known only peace." The gardener's voice held no defensiveness, only patient explanation. "You may join her, mother and daughter, together in sanctuary. No more grief, no more emptiness where her memory lives like a wound. Just peace." For a moment, for one terrible, tempting moment, Sarah almost said yes. Then David's voice cut through. "Sarah, the scanner, you need to see this." She turned. David stood at the barrier, his device pointed into the garden. His face had gone pale. "What is it?" "The pods. They're not just containers, they're converters." He held up the screen so she could see the energy readings. The gardener isn't saving people out of mercy, it's farming them. Their neural energy, their emotional resonance, it's all being harvested and transmitted somewhere. This isn't a sanctuary, it's a power source. The gardener sighed, a sound like wind through empty places. Such reductive terminology. Yes, the peace they experience generates energy my kind can use. But that doesn't diminish the gift I give them. They are happy, and their happiness serves a purpose. Both things can be true. "You're feeding on human suffering," Sarah said, her voice hollow. "I'm transmuting suffering into peace, and peace into sustenance. It's symbiosis, not predation, and it's voluntary. Every person here chose to come. I force no one." "They can't choose if they don't understand what they're choosing." "Can they not?" The gardener moved closer. "Patricia understood. She experienced the garden, returned to your world, and still chose to come back, because even knowing the truth, the peace was better than the pain. That is genuine choice." Sarah looked at her daughter again. Lily, who would never grow up, never laugh, never cry, never live, but also never hurt, never grieve, never know loss. What right did Sarah have to deny her child peace for the sake of a life Lily would never experience anyway? "I can wake them," the gardener said. "If you wish, I can restore their consciousness. But know this, I will show them exactly what awaits in your world, the pain they fled, the trauma that broke them, the void where hope used to live. And then I will ask them to choose. Do you truly believe they will choose suffering over sanctuary?" Sarah's mind reeled. Could she take that chance? Could she wake Lily only to watch her daughter choose oblivion again? "Do it," David said from the barrier. "Wake them, all of them. Let them choose with full knowledge." The gardener regarded him with those ancient silver eyes. "Are you certain? Many will choose to return to the pods, and those who don't will face the very anguish I saved them from. You'll be condemning them to renewed suffering." "Or giving them their lives back," Sarah said, standing up. Her legs shook, but her voice was firm. "You're right that they chose to come here, but they chose based on lies. You told them this was healing. You told them they'd be safe. You didn't tell them they'd be fuel for something else. I told them what they needed to hear to accept mercy. That's not mercy, that's manipulation." Sarah moved toward the center of the garden, where the pods clustered most densely. "Wake them, all of them, tell them the truth, and then let them choose." For a long moment, the gardener was silent. Then, "Very well, but understand, you will bear the responsibility for whatever comes next. Their pain, their deaths, their despair. It will be your doing. I'll live with it." The gardener raised both hands, and light pulsed through the garden like a heartbeat. The pods began to open, fluid draining away, and one by one, the sleepers began to wake. It was chaos. Thousands of people, suddenly conscious after days or weeks or months of empty peace, all trying to understand where they were and what had happened. Confusion turned to panic. Panic turned to screaming. Some collapsed, overwhelmed. Others ran toward the barrier, desperate to escape. And then the gardener spoke, its voice amplified to reach everyone. "You came to me broken. I offered you peace. Now you face a choice. Return to the world that shattered you, or remain here in sanctuary. But know the truth. Here you will feel no pain, because you will feel nothing. Your consciousness will dim to a flicker. You will exist without existing. You will have peace because you will cease to be yourself." The screaming stopped. In the terrible silence that followed, Sarah watched thousands of faces process this information. "Or," the gardener continued, "return to pain, to grief, to trauma, to the world that broke you, but also to possibility, to growth, to the chance, slim as it may be, of genuine healing. The choice is yours." Sarah found her way to Lily's pod. Her daughter was awake, eyes open but unfocused, trying to remember how to be a person again. "Lily?" Sarah's voice broke. "Baby, can you hear me?" Her daughter's eyes found her. For a moment, there was no recognition. Then, like dawn breaking, "Mommy?" Sarah pulled her daughter into her arms, feeling the solid weight of her, the warmth, the impossible miracle of her presence. Lily clung to her, trembling. "Where am I? I had a bad dream about a car. Mommy, my chest hurts." And Sarah understood. The gardener had taken Lily in her final moments, but those moments hadn't been erased, only suspended. Now, awake, Lily was experiencing the death she'd been spared. "I know, baby. I know it hurts." Around them, people were making their choices. Some stumbled toward the barrier, choosing the uncertain pain of life, but more, so many more, turned back toward the pods. "I can't go back," a man near Sarah said, tears streaming down his face. "I can't survive losing her again. I can't." "My mind is broken," a woman whispered. "The war, it broke something inside me. Out there, I'll just break again." "Let me sleep," another voice said. "Please, let me sleep." One by one, they returned to the pods. The fluid rose, their eyes closed, their minds dimmed. Sarah watched them go, her heart breaking, understanding at last why the gardener had warned her. She thought she was saving them. Instead, she'd given them the agony of choosing. But not everyone went back. David crossed the barrier and began helping people who'd chosen to return, guiding them toward the doorway. A young woman, barely 20, an elderly man who said he wanted to see his grandchildren one more time, a teenager who decided she wasn't done fighting yet. Maybe 100 people out of thousands. Sarah held Lily as her daughter's breathing grew labored. The injuries from the accident were manifesting, the death that had been postponed now arriving on schedule. "Mommy, I'm scared." "I know, baby. I'm here. I'm right here." "Will I go to sleep?" Sarah looked up at the gardener, who watched with those implacable silver eyes. "Can you take her pain away? Just the pain, not her consciousness?" "No," the gardener said. "It doesn't work that way. I can offer oblivion or nothing." So Sarah held her daughter and told her stories about heaven, about angels, about a place where pain doesn't exist and love is all that remains. She lied with every word, but they were good lies, kind lies, the lies parents tell to shield their children from the unbearable truth of endings. Lily died in her arms for the second time, and Sarah felt something inside her break that would never heal. But she didn't look away. She didn't let herself flee into numbness. She felt every second of it, the way grief should be felt, terrible and true. When it was over, David helped her carry Lily's body through the barrier and back to the park. The dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed obscenely beautiful. The gardener followed them through, its form already beginning to fade. "You've seen my garden," it said. "You've given them choice. Most chose peace. Does that not prove I offer something valuable?" "It proves people will do anything to escape pain," Sarah said. "But pain is part of being alive, real life, not whatever that was." "And if real life is unbearable?" Sarah looked down at her daughter's face, peaceful now in true death. "Then it's unbearable, but at least it's real." The gardener was silent for a long moment. Then, "I will return. There will always be those who seek sanctuary from the harshness of existence. You cannot stop me." "No," Sarah agreed, "but I can tell people the truth. I can make sure they know what they're really choosing." "Will that stop them?" Sarah thought of the thousands who'd chosen to go back to sleep. Probably not. The gardener faded away like morning mist, leaving behind only a whisper. "We are not so different, you and I. We both offer what broken people seek. You offer the pain of hope. I offer the peace of surrender. Time will tell which is crueler." The aftermath was complicated. The 100 or so people who returned needed intensive care. Most were documented as dead and had to be resurrected legally. All of them carried trauma from their time in the garden, from the choice they'd made and witnessed others unmake. Sarah and David became reluctant advocates, trying to warn people about the gardener's true nature. Some listened, most didn't. The disappearances continued, just as the gardener had predicted. Rachel helped Sarah bury Lily properly this time. At the funeral, she asked, "Do you regret waking her? She could have stayed in peace." Sarah thought about it for a long time before answering. She deserved a real death, not an endless pause. And I deserved to hold her one last time, even if it broke me. Did it break you? Yes, but I'd rather be broken and here than whole and nowhere. 3 months later, Sarah stood on the same bridge where she'd first met the gardener. This time, she wasn't contemplating the jump. She was there to meet a young man who'd messaged her, saying he'd seen the gardener and was trying to decide whether to go. She told him the truth, that the gardener offered real peace, but at the cost of becoming something less than human. That choosing to stay and fight the pain was harder, but at least you remained yourself. "What did you choose?" the young man asked. Sarah looked at the river below, at the city lights reflecting on its surface, at the world in all its broken, painful, beautiful complexity. "I'm still here," she said. "That's my choice. Every day I choose to still be here." The young man was quiet for a while. Then he stepped back from the railing. "Okay," he said. "Okay, maybe I'll choose that too. Just for today." "That's all any of us can do," Sarah said. "Choose for today. And then tomorrow, choose again." They walked off the bridge together, two broken people who decided that being broken and alive was better than being peaceful and gone. Behind them, if Sarah had looked back, she might have seen a tall figure with silver eyes watching from the shadows. But she didn't look back. She was too busy looking forward, toward whatever came next.